All right, we'll go ahead and get started. This is the last week of the class. This is RSM 308, Recreational Sport Programming. And kind of the purpose I have for this last week is just kind of learn some of the opportunities that are out there in recreational sport. And so we're going to look at some of the different areas where you could find employment and different groups that you could work with as you if you do want to pursue this idea of working in the recreational sport realm. So one of the things I mentioned, and if you looked at the Moodle page, you'll see that we'll have some guest speakers coming up with the rest of the time. But one of the things is kind of to frame what they'll be talking about is to just talk a little bit about the different realms where people can work in recreational sport. So one thing to go back to, and this should be reviewed from 242, you should have talked about the leisure service delivery system. And in this part, it's basically any of the agencies or organizations that provide individuals with an opportunity to engage in recreational activities and leisure pursuits. So one of the easiest ways to think of the field of recreation, sport management, leisure is to look at the delivery system. And the delivery system is just, think of it as a network. And all these different agencies and organizations kind of work within a community to try to provide recreation opportunities for its constituents. And one of those areas obviously includes is sport. So how do we get our sport fix? If we want to participate, where do we go to participate? If we want to view, where do we go to view? That's where we get into this leisure service delivery system. And so there's just 8 different components of that delivery system. Again, think of it as a network. And this network tries to catch everybody and provide them an opportunity to experience recreation and leisure pursuits. And including in that is the sport idea. Excuse me. So the 8 different sponsoring agencies within that leisure service delivery system. Some of the ones that you'll first one and most probably common that you'll come across is the government. And we rely on the government to provide us recreation, leisure, and sport. And think of it, the government has 3 different levels, right? You have the federal, state, and local government. At all levels, they provide you with opportunities for sport and participation in sport. Probably the one that you most come in contact is with your local government. You may have taken part in your local Parks and Recreation Department sponsored, Little League or baseball or football or basketball, soccer. Their job is to provide their constituents with opportunities to participate in sport. And a lot of those sports, and the focus of the government is to provide the most amount of opportunities for the least amount of money. So how can we reach the most amount of people for doing it with the least amount of money and charging the least amount of money to do so? And so so you have the local government, you're going to have the state government. State government provides recreation opportunities in particular sport, oftentimes at the college level, but there are state-sponsored sport teams, and those teams are, their funding comes from the state. So and then there's also the federal government will do that. You think about the Olympics as well as that's federal government-sponsored sport. Okay, so they each make their own provision of and provide sport, but probably the most one that you've come in contact with is with your local government, and that can be the city, that can be the county, it may be Parks and Recreation District, like probably Brendan has experienced in Illinois, very common up there. So, but it's all handled by the government. And remember, one of the big things that differentiates the government from all the other entities, like we talked about earlier, is they get support from their tax dollars, from your tax dollars and the tax base that you create to provide these opportunities. So they can supplement it a little bit. You also have the non-profit voluntary organizations. again, a lot of the provision of sport, particularly youth sport, is done by voluntary nonprofit type agencies such as the YMCA, police athletic leagues, Little League, Pop Warner. A lot of those ones that you wrote about in your discussion come back to voluntary nonprofit. The thing to keep in mind with nonprofit voluntary or voluntary nonprofit organizations is that while their focus is provision of recreation and sport opportunities for particularly young people, but it will cross to all generations. They also a lot of times use that sport or recreation opportunities as a means to bring across other teachable moments, teachable lessons. And the other thing where you see the nonprofit is they can still make money on their programming, but what happens is they have to put it back into the organization. They have to reinvest it back into the organization to help bring about those lessons or those focus of kind of that sport for community development. How are we bringing about good within our community and within our young people, and what lessons are we trying to teach? And that's where a lot of the focus goes to for these. The other thing with voluntary doesn't mean all the employees are volunteers. No, they're run by a voluntary board of directors who oversee it, and they volunteer their time and effort to give back to these organizations. So again, a lot of opportunities in sport for this realm. When we talk to, and again, it just has to make sure that your goals, objectives are and your vision and values are in sync with that organization if you're going to really be happy. Other ones, commercial, again, commercial is now about making profit off of sport. And now we're commercializing sport and recreation. How can we make money off of it? And and their idea is we'll provide those opportunities, we'll provide that service, but we're gonna make a profit. We're gonna make money off of it. So where government, voluntary nonprofit try to keep their costs low so they can serve the most amount of people and provide those opportunities, commercial is about we want to make money, and so we're gonna, differentiate our target audience by people that can pay and the people that can't. Okay, and so you have professional sport fall into this category, particularly from a spectator standpoint, where we're paying to go and watch these other people participate, and we want to see their goods, their really well developed skills. But then you also have those types of organizations that provide tournaments and other sport related opportunities for the participant, but the participant's paying money to do so. So you have Triple Crown Sport, you have the Disney with the Wide World of Sports, and you can go and participate in just about any type of sport tournament down there. But the thing is, you have to pay. It's going to cost. Okay? And they're going to make a profit off of that participation in it. And so there's a lot of opportunities there in that realm as well. Military recreation, again, it's a part of the government, and the government sponsors the military. But I put it in, and you'll usually see it as a different segment of this leisure service delivery system because it has a very specialized audience. It's for the servicemen and women as well as their families. And in the military, sport is very important because one of the things that they really emphasize is competition. And they want competition within their servicemen and women. They want them to be ready for action. And one of the ways to keep them sharp is that competition. And so you'll see a lot of sport provided by the military to their servicemen and women and the families to keep them sharp. Now they do a whole lot of other things, but this is a realm where there is a good bit of opportunity if you're interested in working in sport, planning tournaments, planning events, planning activities, and if you're also interested in making some money in our field, if you're willing to go to military zones, they'll pay a whole heck of a lot of money for you to go and plan recreation opportunities for those servicemen and women. Campus recreation, again, part of government, oftentimes state level government. When you look at campus recreation can be colleges, and that's usually what we think of when we think of campus recreation, but it can also be high school. And again, it's going to be sponsored by the state government. In this case, and if you saw our presentation today on campus recreation, part of the money comes from government, but a lot of it comes from very little from the government now. Our presenter today said when he started, it was 40% coming from the state. Now it's like 10%. When you look at Coastal Carolina, we get about 4% of our total budget from the state. So very, very little from there. So most of the money comes from student activity fees or charges that we have to get the participants to pay to help cover the opportunities that we provide. But again, looking at intramurals, club sport are the two kind of sport areas that you'll find within the campus recreation. But then you also have intercollegiate athletics that'll fall into that category as well in the provision of that. Corporate and employee business recreation. Again, this is when large businesses, large corporations provide recreation opportunities for their employees. And a lot of this came out of the 90s with the wellness movement and providing wellness opportunities but an offshoot was recreational sport. And some of the big corporations, they had their own sports leagues. And you'd have people come in and work within that organization to plan those sports leagues, whether it's basketball, softball, kickball, whatever, tennis leagues. Yeah, they would go in and plan those. And it was coming out of larger organizations. Google is a great example. Great recreation, employee recreation focus there. But again, what benefited the employers by the happy employee stays, right? So if we're providing those opportunities for our employees, they're more likely they're going to stay with us. And then you have therapeutic recreation, Special Olympics, the organizations, and I slip my mind right now with therapeutic surf riding. We can go in and we can work with people with disabilities and provide opportunities in recreational sport and give them, that competition, just like, most of the other individuals in our population want. We can provide those opportunities for them. And Melinda Chappell with the RSM 290 class, if you had her, or 280, great example of person working with people with disabilities and providing the opportunities for recreation and recreational sport in that realm. Worked with her. One of the hardest things I ever did was play wheelchair tennis. That is a beast if you've ever played it. Not only do you have to get to the ball with your wheelchair, but then try to have to make contact with it. And it wasn't going well for me. So the last one is private recreation, and that's the clubs. And they have specialized interests, and a lot of times it's tennis, golf, sailing, but the special thing about them is the leadership comes from the membership, and so you may find yourself at an opportunity there. And also senior citizens, this is another area with senior living facilities.